All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Commissioner Franz. It's great to see you. We know that you've got a housing program that you are getting going over there at the Department of Natural Resources, and wanted to come and present that to our members. We're excited to hear what you've got to say, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to begin, if that's all right.
Okay, great. And we've got everybody. I am not technologically advanced. My kids would say that. So thankfully, I have a great team here. Sarah, who's trying to help get it up on the screen and debug our technology issues. And then I have Crosby, who has joined the team at DNR and is really leading the work we're doing in housing. She has a long history of experience. And maybe just talk a little bit about where you came from before you came to DNR.
Well, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. So as the commissioner said, my name is Crosby Carter. I am the Housing Policy Advisor here at DNR. I've had the privilege of working for the commissioner for the past year. I have been working for local government and housing policy for the last 13 years at this point, predominantly in Thurston County, working on comprehensive plan issues, zoning, affordable housing policy, homelessness, up to real estate. So housing is my personal passion, everything that I have invested my career in thus far, and the ability to look at it from the state level lens of how to benefit our community through development of housing in general is such an exciting privilege to have here. So I'm very excited the commissioner brought me on board.
So housing has been a long-standing interest of mine. I know that in every community, both city, county, and every corner of the state, housing has become a challenge as we see too many of our neighbors who are struggling to find a home that they can afford, either own or rent. And it's made it very, very difficult for communities, especially local governments. And I'm a big believer that all of us need to be working together to solve this problem. And the Department of Natural Resources, while it might not seem like it's a natural fit in providing housing, it actually has been doing housing for a very, very long time, but not necessarily focusing on it in a way that is intentional about being a solution for our local communities. And so I'm going to have you switch because I'm afraid to touch anything right now. Oh, we can do that. Yep. For those who don't know, DNR manages over 6 million acres of lands throughout every corner of the state and all of our counties. It's about 2.6 million acres of aquatic lands. That's actually been doing housing for quite some time. If anybody ever saw Sleepless in Seattle, Meg Ryan was one of DNR's tenants at some point in time. And she leased that floating home. I don't know how long, but all of those floating homes are tenants of ours, and they generate revenue and funds our aquatics program, and that revenue goes back to salmon habitat restoration and protection. We also have over 3 million acres of uplands that many of you are very familiar, which generates revenue for our counties, our junior taxing districts, and our schools, universities, technical community colleges, CPRE Trust, and other trusts. And we have many, many different revenue activities on that. The ones you're most familiar with is forestry, agriculture, even commercial, everything from Costco, Safeways, Fred Meyer's, grocery store, to industrial lands. And also in smaller cases, we've had housing on those lands. It's just been a smaller part of our portfolio, one that largely might be the people who are managing our ranch land, or and they live on the land that they also then lease from us. Change, which is that one. Okay. So from that, we generate enormous, diverse amounts of revenue: grazing, agriculture, high value, low value crops, timber harvest, commercial, industrial, clean energy, and communication cell towers. And housing. And this is an area that back when I first came in a little less than 8 years ago, I began asking, well, why, if we have lands in downtown Seattle and Spokane to Tacoma, Forks, Aberdeen, why are we not leveraging them for housing, given the critical needs that our local communities have of, one, being able to provide the housing for the communities, but also to generate more revenue especially looking at how those communities have zoned that land. And originally the thought was, oh my gosh, please, housing is not what we do. It's incredibly difficult and challenging. We shouldn't get into that area of land use, even though we already had. There was a lot of sort of fear and concern. Roll forward to after 2020, as we saw increasing challenges around more and more people needing housing, we began struggling and actually hiring people from across the country. They might be ready to sign up for jobs that were available, but then they found all of a sudden they couldn't afford a home in Forks and Colville and Omak, or even the I-5 corridor. And all of a sudden, a lot of our team began like, we've got to be part of the housing solution. And we began passing some critical pieces of legislation that gets us there. Part of the reason we saw that, one is we needed to provide the workforce, and we needed an affordable housing so that we could actually meet the needs of our own workforce, over 2,400 people, but also the workforce that we heard were struggling with in a lot of our rural communities. We also know that much of our uplands, the funding revenue has largely been based in natural resources, forestry, and agriculture. But anybody knows those are commodities that have up and down cycles, pretty huge. And it was clear that we needed to do more to diversify our revenue stream so that at different points where you do have downturns in the market, we have other areas of land use that can fill in, so it is not just natural resource dependent. And that's why you've seen more of our portfolio is expanding actually into commercial, industrial, clean energy, communications, but also housing. We also see it as a great opportunity for us to actually be working closely with our local governments, our counties, and our cities to be able to meet their responsibilities in reducing the sprawl and pressure on our working forest land and our working agricultural lands, while also providing housing more near job centers, transportation infrastructure, education, and also the opportunity to make sure that we're generating revenue that then funds the basic needs of your communities. So for us, we saw housing as just a complete win-win-win. We began then mapping where we have these residential lands. These are lands that have been zoned residential by the local counties and local governments. We are not determining whether they're best suited for housing. We really actually look to our local governments who know best in the context of land use and where best to put the housing development. And we identified the lands, and we have over 19. We have how many parcels?
There's probably over 25 parcels currently identified as housing sites and over 19 counties across the state.
And here you can see those counties that have been identified that we have those properties within. A couple of things that we did before, and I'm going to turn it over to Crosby to show the progress we made. And we're just in the early stages, I would say, of making sort of significant movements in this. Is one, we passed a law that enabled us to do 99-year leases. Before, our maximum lease time was around 50 years. Anybody who's wanting to go into development of housing, whether it's a nonprofit or actually market rate, is going to be concerned in only having a 50-year lease with us. Think about downtown Seattle. Much of the center of downtown is owned by the University of Washington. They have 99-year leases with those major skyscrapers, infrastructure, and they generate an enormous amount of revenue annually that then helps fund their programs, their endowment, and other. We worked with the legislature to pass a law that enables us to lease for 99 years. Before I turn over to Crosby, there are 3 areas that we're working in housing. We have our own facilities and fleets in every corner of this state. You might see it is where we have our office spaces. It's where our firefighting and workforce and infrastructure. We are working to actually build workforce housing on that for our own firefighters and our own workforce that is struggling to be able to afford housing in their community. The second is where we actually do a land transaction, where we have a willing buyer who's interested in buying that land and putting it to housing. That could be with a private developer. It could also be with a housing authority. It could be with a nonprofit organization where we will do a direct sale. We'll then take that revenue that we get from that sale and go buy other land for that trust, which could be forest land, agriculture, commercial, or industrial lands. The third is where we're leasing those lands, leveraging that law that we passed that gives where we can do a 99-year lease. The reason I love the lease program is actually it enables people to actually enter into home ownership at a lower cost because you're taking the land out of the equation. They own their house. And then when they make their rent payment, they're making a payment to their schools or their fire district or their local community. So it has a beautiful sort of full circle value and benefit. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Crosby. We can give you just a couple of examples, sort of flavor of our first couple of projects that we've been doing.
Yeah, so it's been a really exciting couple months trying to figure out the best way of entering into partnerships and understanding what communities need for housing. The three that have risen to the top in the last few months are on the screen, and they're all a little bit different because every one of your communities is different. Every one of your needs for housing goals are different. The two that are going to be looking at home ownership, one is in Pasco and one is in the City of Lacey's urban growth area. Both are looking at partnerships with Habitat for Humanity and how do we create the opportunity for permanently affordable home ownership, whereby DNR will retain ownership of the land and we will lease it to the Habitat for Humanity to create home ownership units, as the commissioner was saying. You know, think of it kind of as a community land trust, except for DNR owns it, and then we help create lease rates and payment plans, et cetera, over the next 99 years that help make it affordable and generate revenue for the beneficiaries. It's really trying to look at that whole holistic picture. So Pasco and Lacey are looking at home ownership, and if you look at the picture, you'll notice both of these parcels are surrounded by development. And that's what makes it so key, is really trying to understand what your communities need and where housing is supposed to go. And so it's trying to maximize comp plans, zoning, et cetera, where you all have said, yeah, let's have future housing development. Another one that isn't on the screen is in Maple Valley. It's looking at a 15-acre site. And that one, we're looking at creating a multifamily rental housing complex. Is it going to be mixed use, affordable? We're still trying to figure out the nuances there and how does this work? Because again, you know, we aren't an agency of housing experts, we're an agency of land experts. And that is what we're trying to leverage in finding the right partnerships to create housing units to meet your local housing goals. And that's what these three leases that are in progress are looking at, is how do we really benefit the trust, benefit the community, and make it a very ground up approach for creating housing development in your communities.
And I'll just give you shed a little light on the top too. These are two projects, the land sales for housing, where we actually did a direct transaction. We sold 4 acres to Pierce County Housing Authority for about $1 million. We do have to get, if it's a trust land, we do have to get fair market value. It goes through an appraisal, and that's largely because we have, I mean, it's not largely, it is because we have to make sure the trust is kept whole. We sold that property for 1 million acres to the Housing Authority. They're going to build 30+ homes on it. The other one was a project we sold directly to Kitsap County. It's in Silverdale. It was zoned high density residential. It's a pretty significant block, as you can see, 27 acres. So they're going to be able to do some more community, multifamily, commercial, retail, housing.
Fire station
On that property. We actually have a couple of these that we're working on that will actually provide not just housing benefits, but oftentimes those community benefits, community services like a fire station. So next is Crosby's going to talk to you a bit about some recent law we passed just recently that actually gives some more benefit to the community.
So this last session, there was a lot of emphasis, as has been for the last few years, on specifically affordable housing. We were fortunate enough to pass a leasehold excise tax exemption for developers who are building specifically permanently affordable housing units. And it was up to 115% AMI to area median income, to allow for the understanding that affordable housing in Forks versus Olympia and Seattle versus Spokane or Yakima are all very different. So it really allowed that flexibility of what is affordable units for each community. The lease rate has to be at least for 20 years. We would prioritize low income housing, the 0 to 80% AMI. The biggest thing for the counties, which is something we talked a lot with about your association back in like earlier this year, was that these properties that are going to be leased are vacant and producing zero revenue right now. And so the idea is, even though we're waiving the leasehold excise tax, we are then generating predictable, sustainable revenue on these parcels for 99 years, which then is revenue that would otherwise not be used because the parcels are sitting vacant and have been for ever. And so it was a really great way of looking at how to balance a tax exemption with the benefit rather than just a tax exemption by itself, which I know jurisdictions aren't always the most excited about, but this one helps really incentivize meeting those housing goals that, you know, Commerce and Growth Management Act all say we have to meet. Okay, so a lot of the questions I've been getting from everybody is now what? To start with, we've put together a housing toolkit. It's basically a quick little document. You can find it on our website where people can access why is DNR doing housing? What are the steps? Some frequently asked questions and just kind of overview what would it take? And honestly, it's a really simple process. We identify the lands with the partner. We talk about who in each community is best suited for building that housing. So far, we are trying to really base it on working with the local jurisdictions because you all know your communities better than we do. We've been reaching out to nonprofits and developers to create a ground lease model that works for DNR and the developers themselves, and then are really looking at how do we maximize that revenue generation for our beneficiaries while balancing affordability for the households that will be living in those units, because we all know that lease rate will ultimately get passed to those households. So it's creating a holistic approach for how we can help address the housing shortage on the entire continuum from affordable to market rate. And the toolkit's just a really fun way that people can download a document, go to our website and reach out. Yeah, and so this was just kind of a little snapshot because right now to find the lands that are going to be counted as transition lands where the housing is zoned best, you can use our urban and transition lands viewer. It's not the most up to date, but it's the best tool we've got because, as you all know, we work with what we got. And so my best recommendation for people is look on the map, figure out what parcels are in your communities that are DNR owned, and then reach out and see what can happen. Recently, I was reached out to by the Kitsap County's housing authority saying, hey, we have this parcel, it's higher density, but do you think it could be housing? You know what, it's zoned for it, let's have a conversation. It's a ton of land and people just kind of saying, well, what could happen? Which I think is the best thing about this program the commissioner put in place is it's asking what could happen on these parcels and how can we reach our goals through collaborations, and I think really looking at that private-public partnership to create something new. The website is there, and that kind of idea is like, hey, it exists. Reach out and ask more.
I'm gonna learn how to do not share. So that was
When we're gonna try to figure out how to stop sharing the screen. So don't mind me as my face gets really big. Stop share.
go great.
There we go.
Well, thank you for that presentation. We very much appreciate it. Looks like we've had a few more folks join in the meantime. I'd like to open up the floor for any questions for the commissioner and her staff about this exciting new program.
I'll just comment that I think it's very cool and exciting that you're working with Habitat. We did some affordable housing with Habitat in Grace Harbor, but the resources are so limited. They were supposed to build 4 houses. I think they got 3 done in the amount of time, and we've done a couple extensions. It's hard when it's all volunteer labor.
Yeah. You know, I think that one thing I'd just add, I think one thing that's really great about the opportunity too is one, we're easy because we have a lot of land, right? And the counties, the local government zone it. So we are holden to you not only to generate revenue, but also to meet your growth management responsibilities. So that partnership is huge. Also, the connection between a nonprofit, oftentimes we know these nonprofits, for them to be able to make progress, and they need resources from the local government. They need resources from the state government. They also need resources from the federal government. And so we've actually leveraged this to be able to go to the legislature and ask for some funding. Oftentimes our biggest hurdle that we run into is the infrastructure, right? We've got, for example, around 130, 60 acres in Spokane that is ready for hundreds of homes, but the cost to bring in the water and the sewer and the roads, and we don't have that revenue, that money, right? Most often the Habitat for Humanity or Housing Authority doesn't, but we can go to the legislature and ask and show them not only is it value to meet the housing crisis, and we can go now to help address it, but also creates an ongoing revenue stream for local government and local communities. We've also leveraged it to go to the federal government. The Lacey Project is an example. You should just give a little teaser of that,
Sure.
Because of this partnership, it enabled us to take our voice to a higher level to get hopefully more money.
Yeah, the Lacey project is a really exciting and unique one because currently the parcel is zoned for one house per 5 acres. But if we can find a creative way of bringing the sewer to that parcel, it increases to 6 units per 1 acre. And by bringing the sewer to that parcel, it's not just DNR's property, it's the entire community. So we reached out and were successful in a congressionally directed spending request this last year with Strickland, and it was passed through the first wave of review, and now it's just kind of sitting in the ethers of, is the federal government going to pass CDS requests this next year? Whether or not that is successful, it did show the mayor that it passed both levels of screening, that federal government believes in these projects that meet environmental needs, housing needs, community development. And that's really what DNR is about, is that land stewardship.
So part of what we bring is that capacity. I mean, oftentimes these communities don't have access to always getting their voice raised up to be able to make that ask, or they may not have the capacity to write the grant or put all the elements in for example, for a congressional spending, or to lobby in Olympia for the kind of resources we need. So us being a partner on this enables us to bring all those kind of connections, relationships, resources, and capacity to it as well.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Thank you.
And just, so you know, I know we have a piece of property in Aberdeen that I know the city of Aberdeen would like to be residential, and I know we're open absolutely
with
for
them.
conversation. So as a Grays Harbor resident, I can say that to you, saying, hey.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Pollock, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Warney. I was looking at Commissioner Pollock when I said that. It just recently came on camera. Other questions?
Yeah. Hey, you guys. Thanks for the presentation. Hi, Commissioner Franz. What would be the best way to partner with the agency if we wanted to do a county level analysis to see what kind of opportunities there might be? How do you suggest kicking that kind of process off?
So I always love it. Send myself and Crosby an email. We'll make sure that Crosby's email
ma'am.
address is in there, and send us an email and say that you like to kick this off. One of the great things is you have a revenue advisory committee. This is all tied to that. What I think would be best, and this is, I'm going to tell you this so that everybody else can sort of replicate, is we would come in and we'd do a presentation kind of like what we just did, but with some examples, but also we could identify the Clallam County parcels we have that are in that most like either they're already zoned residential or they're transitional lands on the path to it. You could invite organizations like nonprofit organizations or others into it, and we do a full presentation similar here, but maybe just focused and targeted to Clallam County.
Great. Thank you.
I think that's what we kind of did with Pasco.
Yep.
And exactly. And so a number of these places, yeah. Thank you,
Thanks.
Mark. That'd be great.
Thanks, Commissioner. Other questions?
What was your partner's name there?
In
Where?
where? Which
Talking
one?
about Crosby?
Right there with you, because I can only see your name on screen.
Crosby. I'm actually looking, I feel like we're sisters. I'm her much older sister, but yeah, so Crosby and Hilary. What's your email?
Yeah, so Crosby is KROSB as in boy, IE, and then .Carter, CARTER at dnr.wa.gov.
And if you go to the housing, just onto our website, do
Yep.
DNR and then find the housing segment, you'll find her email address there.
Yep.
You'll also find that document right here that kind of just gives you a start on the toolkit that will help. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
and we're happy to come do the same in
Absolutely.
Grays Harbor. So again, it's sort of open to everyone. We love that take up. We do have, for example, Bothell, Spokane, Pierce County.
There's
King- yeah.
parcels in Pierce County, Tacoma, Bothell, Aberdeen, Westport, Spokane, Yakima,
And we can
everywhere.
I'll send you this PowerPoint because it had that map with the name of the counties that has the residential transitional land so that you can then I will be down at the event tomorrow. So if people want to find me, I'm happy to do a side conversation. So
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And if, as you mentioned before, if other communities think that they have a parcel that maybe would qualify that's not on that map, they can also reach out to you as well, right?
Yep. And I know a lot of communities are doing their comprehensive plan updates right now. So they're looking at where, right? We don't usually get involved in zoning unless we're trying to actually help meet the needs of the county. So we're not trying to tell you how to do your land use, but if we see an opportunity that's going to help generate revenue and fits in line with your comp plan, we may go help try to, get certain conditional use permits or other things done on our land that helps support your trusts. And so we see this as a natural relationship, not only in generating revenue, but also helping you meet your growth management requirements.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that the communities are planning right now. Obviously, there were the 2024 adopters, which were the big four counties: Snohomish, King, Pierce, and Kitsap. They were already due at the end of June this year, but the next round has started, and they'll be done in 2025, and that goes through 2027. So the entire state of Washington, all the cities and all the counties will be updating their comprehensive plans. Obviously, the GMA counties have a lot more responsibilities, especially around housing and thinking about your program and how it might help them meet those housing goals that are required under 1220, especially to plan for different types of economic segments to supply housing. This could really be an interesting opportunity and an interesting tool. I just want to say thanks for thinking a little bit outside the box. I mean, this is not shellfish and trees by any means. And it's certainly not just straight, agricultural land management, or even, I know you have other things like, retail licenses and whatnot. Housing is a bit of a departure, I would say, for DNR, and certainly doesn't fit within the box of natural resources, that most people think of. But being able to look at assets that the state has and think a little bit more creatively about how we can actually utilize those assets in a way that we need them to address the problems of today, I think is pretty innovative, and it shows pretty strong leadership from your office. So I just want to say thank you for that, and we appreciate all that you've done these last 8 years as Public Lands Commissioner. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I know, I'm looking forward to it. Well, so let me first start too, is like, I think our name doesn't help us, right? I mean, most people think we're Parks and Rec, and I will tell you after 8 years, there is not much about this job that is Parks and Rec in any way. We could use a lot more humor and joy sometimes, as many of you may know. I know you face some of the same challenges and issues we face. But really, we are probably the most representative of the entire state in the context of the diversity of land types, the diversity of economic bases. Like I said, we provide communication infrastructure to a lot of your communities, and we provide the food, the wood, the water, the energy, as well as to me, it's made 100% sense that we also provide the housing, given our land is in the most diverse locations, like downtown Seattle, right behind the Pike Place Market. And it's a surface parking lot making $150,000 for schools. And it should be an 18-story building, providing housing and retail and commercial and all the needs that community has. And so what I would say to all of you is just, we are here, we are wanting to do our best to serve the people of the state, to serve our local communities. And sometimes what's great about the parcels we have is that they are large. In some places, they are very large. Like, I think the example in Spokane is a great one, where we have some really large size parcels in the UGA that enables, as you know, when you have an entity that wants to work with the local government and serve the needs of the local government, enables us to think more strategically today about how much of this land should be for housing, how much of this land should be for a community park, right? How much of it should actually provide also a fire station because they're looking to site it, or we have a school, for example, that's needing maybe a better location, and we fund schools. So why don't we also look at that land providing that amenity? When they're that large, you can build almost a whole community neighborhood that builds the larger resources that the community has and the local government has, not just housing and the revenue, but the whole suite of resources. So lots of great opportunities, and we're ready for it. It's taken a little longer than I'd like, but that's how this works. It's never easy. But we're open for business.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Franz. You've been a great partner over the years, and it's always a pleasure to have you address our members. Are there any final questions for the commissioner before we sign off today?
Okay, don't be shy. That's all I'd say. You know, you can see first one in, easiest to get, not always the easiest to get solved, but first one in, there's now, I think we're hoping the floodgates open up for this issue. But those who showed up today already are getting a head start. So ping Crosby and me, and looking forward to working with you all. And thanks for all your leadership. As I always say, local government is the most necessary. Leadership at the local level is most necessary and the most challenging. So thank you for all that you guys do.
Derek, did you have some final words?
Before we let Commissioner Franz leave, I'll just note that that project in Pierce County that she noted, I happened to still be on the council at the time, and the part that DNR played in it was by far the smoothest, and so and there was a lot involved, but that went really well, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Our people love this. Yeah. So thank you so much. And thanks for your leadership there too. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for putting up with my technical difficulties, but you had the best laugh, the biggest laugh today because of all that you said for the first 15 minutes.
Well, I'm glad we could entertain you while you were trying to get things squared around. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow in Vancouver.
Likewise. Thank you guys.
We
Bye-bye.
look forward to seeing all the rest of you tomorrow in Vancouver as well, hopefully at our annual conference. Have a great rest of your day and safe travels, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.